Good afternoon. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and Glendale Housing Authority. Calling the Glendale City Council to order with a roll call, please.
Council members Asadrian.
Here.
Devine. Kasakian.
Here.
Najarian. Mayor Brotman.
Here.
And I would like to call to order the Housing Authority meeting, and I'll take a roll call. Housing Authority members Ajinian.
Here.
Asadrian.
Here.
Brotman.
Here.
Devine. Kasakian.
Here.
Farazian.
Here.
Chair Najarian.
And maybe you can ask for a motion.
Just so for the record, with the absence of the Chair Najarian and Vice Chair Devine, if we can get a motion for somebody to be the pro tem for the Housing Authority for this meeting?
We get a
Mr.
motion?
Arginian okay with being the?
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, then I'll make a motion for Mr. Arginian to serve as the vice chair or acting chair.
Pro tem.
Pro tem. Pro tem.
Okay.
A
And,
second.
I'll second.
okay, so, okay.
And we do not need roll call for this unless someone objects.
Okay.
That's correct.
No objection? Okay. You are now
Very well.
formally the pro tem, or
Okay.
vice chair.
Good
Okay.
afternoon. I am Robert Aginian, and you're newly appointed pro tem, so may we go ahead with the agenda?
Yes, the agenda report is, my agenda report is the agenda for the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 joint public meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority was posted on January 4th, 2024 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, and we have one item, and would you kindly read the item into the record?
Yes. Our one and only item is Community Services and Parks regarding acceptance of additional homelessness initiative Measure H funds for fiscal year 2023-2024. A council motion accepting fiscal year 2023-2024 homelessness initiative Measure H funds for fiscal year 2023-2024 from the Los Angeles Homelessness Services Authority in the amount of $342,640 for 3 eligible homeless strategies approved by the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors and authorizing the city manager or designee to execute all agreements, certifications, and documents necessary to accept and implement the funding. And B, council resolution of appropriation to appropriate additional homeless initiative Measure H funds in the amount of $423,516 for 3 eligible homeless strategies approved by the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors.
Okay, turning it over to Mr. Galanian.
We went to green. Good afternoon, Mayor Brotman, members of City Council, Housing Vice Chair Pro Tem Aginian, member of Housing Authority. Just going to turn this item over to Arsene Isayan, our Homeless Programs Manager, to present it to you for your consideration.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Galanian. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Ajanian, members of the Housing Authority. Good afternoon, Mayor Brotman, members of City Council. First of all, Happy New Year. I am here today to provide a brief presentation on the Measure H funds, primarily for fiscal year 23 and 24. I did want to provide a brief overview of some historical information with the Measure H funds to just give you guys a better idea of why I'm here today. So as you know, Measure H was a quarter-cent sales tax approved by voters in 2017. Funding through Measure H is to be used to combat homelessness within our region. There are a total of 51 strategies that the county listed to be funded under the Measure H funds, of which if they all kind of fall under 5 primary buckets or components, which is the coordination, prevention, connection, housing, and stabilization for our unhoused population and those who are at risk. And then within those components, the county is to work with our local city or other cities, mainstream service providers, to be able to rapidly rehouse our clients countywide. So that's just a very brief overview of the Measure H funds. I wanted to provide some historical information on how much funding the city of Glendale received from the county since inception. As you can see, we received a total of a little over 1.6 million in Measure H funds, of which a little over 219,000 was used for administrative costs, and the remaining funds were dispersed to our local nonprofits through a local competition process, an RFP, to be used for various types of homeless programs. The 5 strategies, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there we go. 5 strategies were actually determined by the county for the city of Glendale. We actually did not have a say in which strategies we were to be funded under. This was determined by the county, and so therefore it created a lot of challenges for us initially, because we really wanted to make sure that our local priorities were being taken into consideration. So initially we had homeless prevention for homeless individuals and families. At the time, in 2018, homeless prevention was only to be used for individuals. City of Glendale did not have access to homeless prevention funding for families. I'm happy to say that we now do. Same with rapid rehousing. We also received funding for our outreach program in Glendale. Even though it says countywide, these funds were primarily used for our local outreach teams. We also received funding to strengthen our coordinated entry system for homeless individuals. As you all know, City of Glendale has a coordinated entry system here locally that's operated by our lead agency, Essentia, as I've mentioned before, and this pot of money is to support our local efforts with that system. And lastly, Strategy E8 was to be utilized to expand our existing emergency shelter system to increase the number of beds. So these were the key strategies that were awarded to the city. I am happy to say that in the last year, after working very closely with the county, we have a lot more flexibility with these strategies. The city of Glendale is able to shift funding around within each strategy, whereas in the past, we were pretty much locked down to what the county would approve. For example, and this is an actual amount, if $10,000 was awarded under E7, coordinated entry system, well, that $10,000 wouldn't really allow us to do much locally. So we really did work closely with the county to grant us a bit more flexibility with shifting funds around. And so now I'm happy to say, have flexibility to do that with our Measure H funds. 2 new things also that I wanted to highlight today. In the past, we were only able to utilize our homeless prevention and rapid rehousing funds for homeless individuals, which created another challenge for us because we have families locally who need rental assistance. The county has now agreed to expand the program to help our homeless families. And as you can see, from fiscal year 2022-2023 to 2023-2024 fiscal year, there was about $133,000 increase in our Measure H allocation. And that's specifically to support the rapid rehousing program that we would like to operate on an ongoing basis locally. And that funding will support families and individuals. And just to give you an idea, we do contribute around $10 to $11 million in sales tax annually. In return, we have received a little over 1.6 million in Measure H funds, which is really not enough to support our homeless response system locally.
Question
Yes.
on the last slide. Why do we have like 18, 19 twice and 20, 21 twice?
We were very technical, I guess, when listing this, but just to give you a little bit more background, we had a lot of issues initially with the contracting. We went back and forth quite a bit initially, so the county awarded the grant funds in different phases. So in 2018, we were awarded, for example, $12,000. Within that same fiscal year, we were then awarded the additional $17,000. So technically, we could have combined those, but we kind of left them separately for us to know at what time those funding awards were made, announcements were made. There has been a lot of back and forth with the county and the execution of contracts, and I want to say that we're almost always a year behind in executing our contracts, which is why I'll kind of jump into why we haven't really been able to disperse the funds in the last 3 years. But collectively, altogether, we have brought in 1.6 million, We have spent a portion of those funds, and I'll kind of jump into how much is now available and what we plan on doing with those funds. So we have 3 years of Measure H funds that we need to basically award our local nonprofits or agencies through an RFP process. And we really wanted to be intentional with the Measure H funding. As you all know, a few years ago with the pandemic, we received a significant amount of money through the CARES Act, the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, which really we were able to sustain our programs with the use of those funds. But now that CARES Act has come to an end, actually this past September, we decided to do a gaps analysis. You know, we wanted to meet with the community, with our agencies, with our board, to see what are the needs in Glendale. How can we be more intentional with the use of these Measure H funds? Where do we need to allocate the funds? And collectively, I'll give you a little background. As you all know, we only have about 45 beds here in Glendale, an emergency shelter at Essentia. And those 45 beds are not allocated specifically to Glendale. They're open to anyone countywide that is seeking shelter. We also have a 16-bed shelter at a YWCA of Glendale and Pasadena for women and children who are fleeing or are victims of DV. And then we also have a very small seasonal year-round motel program thanks to our Measure S funds, local Measure S funds, that we're able to utilize to place some of our local unhoused neighbors into shelters, especially during the winter months. We have about 85 active households currently in our permanent supportive housing programs. We only have 5 PSH programs locally here in the city. And as you know, with permanent supportive housing programs, there isn't a lot of movement. Once people are housed, it is considered permanent housing unless they graduate from the program, leave the program. So there isn't much movement there. And we really need to increase the number of rapid rehousing programs in our continuum. Currently, we have 11 households that are leased up in our rapid rehousing program. So we really need to see more of an increase to be able to house our families and our individuals a lot faster than we are currently. And the rapid rehousing program is really beneficial, especially now with our emergency housing voucher program. We're able to quickly transition folks into rapid rehousing and then work with them to get them connected to EHV. So it reduces the length of time that our clients remain homeless because there's less restrictions and requirements. So all this to say that with the use of the Measure H funds, we did issue an RFP back in December. On December 7th, we issued an RFP, and jumping ahead here, just to kind of give you guys perspective, other COCs versus Glendale, I wanted to highlight how many rapid rehousing beds, for example, Pasadena has. They were able to increase their rapid rehousing beds from 66 to 101, 53% increase in their rapid rehousing beds. And LA City had a 5% increase, whereas Glendale, we had a 41% decrease in our rapid rehousing beds. And it's really, really important for us to increase the number of beds. It also impacts us when we apply for future grants. The Department of Housing and Urban Development does look at this area when they are awarding us our funding through HUD.
Question, I don't really understand that. So where are these beds? And
In Glendale.
Why are we losing them?
Mayor Broadman, we're losing them because of lack of funding. So as CARES funds came to an end, or they were coming closer to an end, we could no longer help more families and individuals through rapid rehousing. So that caused us to decrease the number of beds that we have available in our continuum. We don't have a year-round rapid rehousing program. We don't have this consistent stream of funding to keep operating a local rapid rehousing program. And so this is one area that we want to bring in a consistent stream of funding to make sure that we always have, and when I say beds, I mean just the program itself, rental assistance available. So families and individuals under the rapid rehousing program are able to secure a place on their own, and the city and the agencies come in and provide rental assistance anywhere from 3 months all the way to 36 months if we need to. Until they are able to, stabilize, get connected to income, and eventually transition into their own, permanent housing. So it's scattered all throughout Glendale. It's not like a unique site or a project-based program. Clients have the ability to rent on their own. It's tenant-based rental assistance. It's just we have the funding to support them with the rental assistance until they can get back on their feet. Yeah.
Mayor Robin, if I may, you had noted that Essentia is 45 beds. While we say it's 45, it's not necessarily it's not held for us, but we're paying Essentia for those beds, but those beds are could be utilized and are potentially being utilized by other cities. Is that?
We don't directly pay for the beds. I know that a little over, I want to say maybe close to about 10 years ago, the city did help Essentia through home funds, I believe. We did fund the development of the shelter. And in return, Essentia had built a permanent supportive housing program, Gardena Permanent Supportive Housing Project, where they would match the funds by placing our clients into their programs. So we did initially help with the shelter when they first purchased the property and developed the shelter, but we also pay for other programs that are funded through Essentia. We pay over, all the way up to, I want to say maybe a little over $2 million in funds for Essentia to be able to have staff, to have the capacity to operate the shelter. Their outreach programs, their coordinated entry program is funded 100% by the city of Glendale. Their PSH programs are also funded by the city of Glendale, staffing and rental assistance. So all in all, even though we don't pay for beds directly, we do pay for a significant amount of the funds that the city does pay to Essentia really comes from our grant funds. And we have offered to pay for beds. In fact, during our state HAP RFP process, we just recently released an RFP for state funds. We had actually put out a significant amount of funds to help fund shelter beds and interim housing programs. Unfortunately, we didn't receive any applications from our agencies, including Essentia, for the city to directly fund beds that are allocated to our continuum. So,
So I'm sorry, but so when you say 45 beds that are supposed to be ours, but we're not really paying for them, you're saying we're not paying for them directly. We're paying for, but we're still paying for them. I know that when you had brought this report, I believe last year, one of the questions I did pose was, do we need to look at other agencies as well to help mitigate or look at our contract with Essentia? I don't know what our contract looks like with them, but what I want to make sure that we're doing is whether it's direct or indirect funding that goes to Essentia, provided the unhoused crisis that we're dealing with in the region, wanting to make sure that we're also taking care of the city of Glendale folks that are coming through. And it's not that we're allocating resources, but then it's, others from other cities that are benefiting from that, which is not an issue, but I want to make sure that we're taking care of our own first.
Councilmember Asatarian, I acknowledge that statement, and I know that we've been working very closely with Essentia to see how we can better support them to be able to have more direct access to those beds. And I do agree with you that we want to help everyone that comes through our continuum. There are no boundaries when you're trying to help the unhoused, but we also want to make sure that the folks that we're coming across on our streets, especially since we've all seen a spike in the homeless population within our jurisdiction, that we have a balance and that we do have some access when we need those beds. And then we've been working very closely with Essentia to try to see how we can help them and how we can secure some additional beds. And as I mentioned, we do have also the motel program locally, and we're trying to place a lot of our families and individuals through our motel program. And I know that staff has been in talks to see what other options we have and how we can increase the number of emergency shelter beds in our community. So if we have any updates, I'm happy to report back to Mr. Galanian and Housing Authority and City Council with updates.
I would like to at least, get a briefing on the contract that we have, and the stipulations within the contract and what they are supposed to be providing. And I think it would be worthwhile for all of us to kind of see that, because, again, if we're putting funding in, I want to make sure that that funding's coming back to our residents.
Yes, noted. Thank you. Make a note of that.
I just want to say that overall, our agency is doing a phenomenal job with the housing here in Glendale. But are we taking any account of what other cities are doing in relation to this county design?
Vice Chair Ajanian, we actually collaborate very closely with our county partners. Myself and my team, we do partner with them. We're part of their policy council. We're part of various groups and meetings that we attend countywide, SPA2-wide. I'll have to be honest with you, unfortunately, everyone's kind of in the same position. Even countywide, when they have more funding and more resources, they do find themselves, they fall short on the number of rapid rehousing beds. There's just not enough to go around for everyone in the county, and we are trying to be more innovative. Again, as I mentioned, we're trying to be more intentional with the use of our funds. It's not business as usual. We want to really focus on areas where there are gaps in our continuum, and so we want to start with that. And eventually, if we fill in these gaps, we increase our number of beds, for example, through rapid rehousing. We do want to look at securing more funds through our annual Continuum of Care program that I present each year, the competition process that we go through every year. One of our goals is to really be at capacity and in a position where we can actually start applying for more funding through HUD and securing additional funds for ongoing projects. At this time, unfortunately, because we don't have enough funding to support certain components, we have not taken those steps yet. But the goal is to eventually expand, and we do continuously, consistently, we partner countywide to see what the county is doing. And
So the similarities are there, and that's good to know, that we're not the only one.
oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, I guess I'll continue. So we did issue an RFP back in November, I'm sorry. We received our applications on December 7th. Our Continuum of Board met with each of our agencies, and the city follows the same process as some of our other programs like the COC. We go through a scoring and ranking process with each application. We present our staff analysis to our board, and then the board ultimately interviews each agency and makes their funding recommendations. So based on our local need, based on the agency's ranking on each application scoring, I do want to say that about 80% of our funds, Measure H funds, will go to support rapid rehousing programs here in the city of Glendale. The true primary agencies that will take the lead on the rapid rehousing program are Home Again LA, formerly known as Family Promise of the Verdugos. They are our lead agency for homeless families, and they will be taking the lead on working with our outreach teams, as they have been, to place homeless families into our rapid rehousing program, as well as the Armenian Relief Society. They will be working with our homeless individuals, with all of our agencies in Glendale that serve the unhoused and those who are at risk. They will be the lead agency supporting the city. So I won't go into all of the funding amounts, it is on the slide, but a good significant portion of the funds will go to support their efforts. We did allocate funds for the Glendale Youth Alliance. GYA has actually been supporting all of our agencies countywide, not just Glendale, with hotel vouchers for our homeless youth. And then they work with Glendale and City of Glendale and the county to place our homeless youth into more long-term programs. We did allocate, a small portion to coordinated outreach. Home Again LA has launched a new mobile outreach program. They want to reach out to everyone, especially those in our underserved areas, with access to, internet, access to certain programs that they may not be made aware of. So they will be actually physically driving around in those specific areas throughout Glendale, getting folks connected to services by assisting them, filling out applications, attending local events. So we're really excited about this outreach program that they're planning on expanding. And then with that said, we also allocated around $86,000 for housing navigation and location. Because two of our main agencies have a heavy caseload, they're going to be serving combined over about 140 clients. We want to make sure that they have, some small portion of funds to support staff for case management. So they will be also receiving some funding for their personnel to help support them through that process. And about 121,000, a little over 121,000 will be kept in-house to support our administrative team for grants management, contracting, and everything else that comes with managing the grant. And with that said, I think I covered everything. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And the main reason why I'm here today is just requesting motion to approve and accept the fiscal year 2023 Measure H funds in the amount of $342,640. And we are also requesting a resolution of appropriation to appropriate a total of $423,516. And as you know, as you can see, that amount is slightly higher. We did have a little over $80,000 that was not carried over from previous projects that were closed out. So we wanted to make sure that we carry over the total amount and help our agencies with as much funding as we possibly can. So I hope I covered everything. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for your time.
And I would be happy to make the motion and make the motion for the resolution of appropriation. But I want to also, and I'll make those, but I also want to add a question. So currently, if there's someone who has a need for housing, who we identify as homeless, who we've made contact with, how long does it approximately take for them to get one of those available beds in one of our shelters that we work with? A ballpark figure. I'm sure it varies at different times.
Councilmember Kasakian, Housing Authority, Member Kasakian, takes at least a minimum a month, if not longer. And
Well, the reason I want to pose that question and hear your answer is so the public also understands that when we see individuals who are unhoused, who are living on the street elsewhere, that it's not as simple as just making contact with them, putting a roof over their head. It is a process. And how do we compare in that period of time with, say, the city of Los Angeles? If the person was right across the border, how long does it take for them to get into a shelter? Is it longer?
we would have to look into the data and pull the assessments to check. The challenging part, and the reason why I'm reluctant to answer, is because usually we won't know until clients come to us. The only time we've been able to actually directly work with Essentia is if we actually hear about clients wanting to go to the shelter and they're not able to go. Mm-hmm. So they'll contact the city of Glendale, we'll follow up with Essentia, and then they'll get back to us saying, well, we've got 18 other people on the waiting list. And then what we've started doing now is we request a monthly shelter list from Essentia. And my team, our lead CES outreach coordinator, Tommy Hodge, Mr. Hodge, usually is now checking monthly to see if those folks are moving up on the list. So if they can't help them within a month, we want to know at what point are individuals able to enter the shelter.
And that's a monthly, the report is the monthly wait list, but not necessarily the list of who's actually in those. So is there a way to require the agencies that we're working with, that we may not directly pay for beds, but we're still providing some funding for, significant funding, to provide us with a list as to the point of origin of some of the individuals that are benefiting from our resources?
We actually do that as well, in addition to the waiting list. It's not monthly, but I do typically check in with them quarterly, which we will probably start doing that monthly now, just to get a better idea of how many people. But I can confidently say that more than 70 or 80% of the clients are not from Glendale. I can confidently say that.
So I think that is something that bears repeating, because here's the issue: when the tiny home communities are built throughout Los Angeles in various council districts, and I'm going to take a moment to criticize our much larger neighbor on many sides of our city. In order for individuals to benefit or to utilize those services, they need to demonstrate that they are an individual who is homeless, who's unhoused from that council district, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So the fact that we in Glendale are giving up our shelter spaces to individuals outside is, to me, unfair, unjust to those individuals that we have in our community who have fallen on hard times. And, I mean, there's so many things that are, I think, broken with the way we're approaching the crisis, the humanitarian crisis we have now with the unhoused, not the least of which is the amount of money that Glendale is putting in terms of sales tax to Measure H and what we're receiving in return. I'm not asking for a lot. I understand there's communities that may not be as well off as ours that are struggling, and we need to all carry the weight, help carry the weight. But what we're receiving, what the figures that you showed us are abysmal and unfair. And I know that our county Supervisor Barger hears us loud and clear and has been an advocate for us. But I hope the rest of the county hears us as well, including our legislators and some of our leaders in Sacramento. So those are my comments and observations. And I want to thank Ms. Isayan, Mr. Bolanikian, and all of your staff. I've worked closely with you on a few particular cases, and my eyes have been opened wide to how broken some of the other bureaucratic systems are. And I'm glad we have the type of staff we do here in Glendale. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
I do have one comment. Sometime last year, I actually went for a ride-along with one of our police officers, during which time we obviously came across some unhoused individuals. And so I think I took that time to also ask questions about the partnership between our homeless services and our police department. I think I don't know how we can better structure that. I recognize that there is a partnership, but I think it's different when a police officer walks up to an unhoused person and hands them a card that provides them maybe a phone number to services versus having individuals that are actually from our housing department or homeless services. Maybe it's something that's done, once a week or once every couple of weeks. My understanding from that ride-along was also a lot of these individuals happen to remain in the same place. And so our police officers are pretty well versed in who's kind of where and where we can get services. And I'll tell you, I really do think that there is a difference between someone, who is better equipped at all the services that are available. I know that I had an interaction with a local veteran that we passed on the phone number to, and in that moment, he was also asking me questions about additional services, and I had no answer, right? But I'm handing over a phone number versus just being present there in that moment, and I think that makes the difference. So I don't know if we can possibly set up a meet with our police department to figure out how we can strengthen that partnership, and help identify. I mean, they can identify where those locations are and those individuals are, and if we can better serve them, I think it would be very worthwhile for us to take that approach. And I echo in Councilmember Kasakian's comments about the county and what we're getting in return for the funds, and I am very much interested in, I know Sensi's been growing and I appreciate their service. I just want to make sure that our funds are being spent correctly. So I think between the partnership with the PD and me wanting to particularly see the contract and how we can revisit that partnership and take a look at other options, if that's where we need to go, then I know that over the course of the last year, we've heard a lot from residents about the increase in the homeless population, the concerns over it, and I think, I want to make sure that we're not getting to a point where we've always prided ourselves as being a city that has a low homeless count and being proactive. And I commend our staff with the amount of incredible work that you do. I know that anytime I've reached out, it's been handled so quickly. And, I hear from those families time again over time. And I think it's one of the most rewarding things to hear about how, people's lives can alter to the worst. And then, with the right kind of support system, get back on their feet. And so commend you for your work. And, I'd be happy to make the second for that
Thank
motion.
you. I also want to just say thank you to add on to what Councilmember Al-Satrian said and the Housing Authority and all the comments that have been made. I really, really appreciate that during the pandemic, when many people were working from home or doing hybrid, that our staff was out there in the field talking to people, physically present. That has not gone unnoticed. It is very much appreciated, and it speaks volumes to the commitment that our staff has, the city has, to helping those in need. These are not the things that get published on social media. They're not the things that people see TikTok videos about. It's the real work and helping real people with real problems. And unfortunately, sometimes we're unsuccessful. Sometimes, fortunately, we are successful. We've helped people who we've lost as well. But it is an ongoing battle, and you guys are at the forefront of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will share that with my team as well. Thank you.
Any other comments? So I just will echo what you've heard already and say thank you for this report. Thank you for all the work you do. And I know there's a lot of difficult bureaucratic barriers, and you probably end up spending a lot of time on things that are not really solving the problem, like arguing about which category of funding, you need to spend money on, and silly things like that, whether you can do families versus individuals. It's too bad that so much time has to be spent on these things, but I know that's the way it is. So anyway, we thank you again, and we have a motion and a second. This is just council. There's nothing from the Housing Authority, right?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
So we have the motion and a second for 1A and 1B, I think, right?
All right.
For the resolution of appropriation. Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Asadrian,
Yes.
Divine, Kasakian,
Yes.
Najarian, Mayor Brotman.
Yes. Thank you. And
For housing?
housing there's no action
There's
for
no action.
housing on this item.
That's correct.
So
I'll
I guess
make
it's
a-
just time for an adjournment,
I'll make a motion for council to adjourn.
okay?
Second.
I second it.
Okay, council is adjourned.
I'll also make the
4:46.
motion for Housing Authority to adjourn.
I second it.
And I'll second that. You
Okay.
can't because you're
can't.
yeah, I'll second that.
Oh.
Then
I think
can
you gotta
just-
say-
And then you can just say we're adjourned at,
We're adjourned.
okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
And we have closed session. We're ready? Okay, calling the city council meeting to order for closed session at 4:47 PM. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, council members Asadrian,
Here.
Divine, Kasakian,
Here.
Najarian, Mayor Brotman.
Here. May we have your report, please?
Just the one item for the closed session is public employee appointment, deputy city attorney.
Okay, and will we be reporting out on this item?
Mayor, we anticipate reporting out on this item.
Okay, we'll be reporting out. Okay, with that, we'll recess to closed session.